Welcome to Self Principle. As always, I'm Dr. Hashmi. Now, today's topic is really interesting because as we talk about all sorts of studies on how to live longer and how this study can help to reduce the risk of heart disease, heart attack, strokes, but the one thing that we haven't touched on so much is really what happens in your golden years. And one of those diseases that's really devastating is dementia. It's Alzheimer's. It's forgetting things. It's forgetting who you are. It's forgetting the people you love. So today's topic is all about this concept of what can we do to lower our risk of getting dementia? Is there an ideal dementia diet? So before we dive into all of the research around it, what's interesting and scary about dementia is how many people are affected by it. Now in 2014, 5 million adults over the age of 65 were affected with dementia. 5 million. But it's projected that by 2060, you're looking at over 14 million adults, meaning folks over the age of 65 who would have dementia. So anytime there's any kind of study that comes out that has some hope for us, because as you know, there really aren't any medication so far that can prevent dementia, that can lower the risk of dementia going on. So it's really lifestyle. Aside from quitting smoking, sleeping 7 to 9 hours a day, moving more, making better relationships, doing the things we love, what can we do with the food? Well, there's an interesting study that it looks at dietary flavonoid intake and what impact it has when it comes to cognitive decline, meaning how fast your memory declines as you get older. So in this particular case, this is a longitudinal study, which means they're looking at people as they grow older over several years. How long? It's decades. So they used the Nurses' Health Study, which had 49,493 women from 1984 to 2006. And there were 7 different food frequency questionnaires that were repeated to make sure that they were assessing the data accurately. And for the men, they used the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study, another longitudinal long-term study that's been going on, 27,400 men in there. And once again, they repeated the food frequency questionnaires 5 times to make sure that they were able to understand exactly what was going on. So let's get into some of the findings, what the mechanisms could be, and really, what are some of the key things you can do right now that can lower your risk of dementia? So first is, if you look at the folks that had the highest versus the lowest intake of flavonoids, what you saw was that the highest intake folks had a 19% decreased risk of cognitive decline going on. And if you look at a subtype of flavonoids, flavonoids have a few different subtypes. Flavones, for example, which are found in yellow and orange fruits and vegetables, they had a 38% reduction in the risk of getting cognitive decline. Now, these are subjective tests, but still, these are significant risk reductions that you're seeing. Flavonoids, on the other hand, which are found in citrus fruits. Those folks who had the highest intakes of flavonoids through citrus fruits had a 36% reduction. And then lastly, there were the anthocyanins. These are present in blueberries, blackberries, cherries, and they had a 24% reduction in subjective cognitive decline. So you have all of these fruits and vegetables, these colorful berries, the yellow-orange fruits, the citrus fruits, right? All of these things are rich with flavonoids, and these flavonoids are very powerful when it comes to protecting your brain. What's fascinating about this study is they went ahead and they wanted to make sure that they adjusted for all sorts of variables. So things like vitamins, like vitamin C, D, E, protein, fatty acids, carotenoids. And even after trying to adjust for all of those things, the results that we just talked about were still significant. So it's important to understand that. Now that's all great, it's scientific data, but what does this mean for you? In other words, if you're listening to this, what can you start doing right now? Well, it's pretty simple. As you think about eating, what a whole foods plant-based diet does is it gives you all of these nutritious foods that are good for your heart, lungs, kidneys, and now we're finding out more and more how important they are for brains. So some of those foods that you want to focus on based on this data are strawberries, oranges, grapefruits, citrus fruits, apples, pears, celery, peppers, and bananas. That's your list of the key foods that were really found to be rich in flavonoids and were shown to have a protective benefit as far as cognitive decline. Now, what's good about this study is they followed these people for decades, so it really gives you strength around it. And the food frequency questionnaires were repeated multiple times to make sure they were really capturing this. So if you're thinking about this, the question is, what are some of these mechanisms? What's about these flavonoids found in fruits and vegetables, these colorful fruits and vegetables, that makes them so powerful? There's actually a few possible mechanisms. One is they serve as very powerful antioxidants. They go in, they scavenge those free radicals that can cause all sorts of inflammation. They can inhibit or block beta amyloid from basically damaging the brain cells. Then flavonoids and anthocyanins also have some really interesting things they can do. They can lower inflammation in the brain, what we call neuroinflammation. And they can prevent those beta amyloids from sort of sticking together and forming these tight fibrils. And so by preventing that, they prevent that thick plaque forming inside the brains. And then the flavonoids, they can also increase BDNF. BDNF is brain-derived neurotrophic factors. And what BDNF is really important for is learning and memory. So the more BDNF we have, the better we're going to learn, the sharper our memory is going to be, and what's great for increasing is flavonoids. All right, so as you think about this study, of course, there's going to be limitations. This study is no exception. So some of those limitations were that, of course, it's based on a food frequency questionnaire. It's a correlation study. That means it's not saying causation. It's not saying that eating strawberries will prevent any kind of memory decline. That's not what it's saying. But it's saying that the people who eat the most abundant, colorful fruits and vegetables, they have the lowest risk. So what is really the take-home message? What can you take home from this and apply to your life? It's very simple. If you add colorful fruits and vegetables to every plate, whenever you sit down to eat, this becomes a part of our healthy diet. It's good for your heart. We've already shown the data on how it's good for the kidneys and just about every part of your body. And now we know that it's also really, really good for the brain. I want to thank you guys so much for checking us out and supporting this work. Self Principle is a 501c3 nonprofit. We run it because of your support. So please follow us on social media, like this podcast and video, leave a comment, share this with your friends. This is the only way we're able to continue this message of trying to help you live your best life possible. Thanks so much for watching.